The Phoenix Suns G League roster has now been finally assembled as their draft expansion was today. And you might see some names on this team that you can remember. Guys from like Emmanuel Mudiay to Jahlil Okafor were selected. And this Phoenix Suns team has the possibility to have some young talent, but also old NBA guys that could have some untapped potential to fulfill with this squad. We'll be diving in looking at all of this and more on this episode of Suns Digest. I'm Bruce Velez. Before we get into all of this news, though, if you guys do enjoy the content, we do ask you to hit that like button, as this is the place for the daily and centralized Phoenix Suns news. As we try to get to 1,000 subscribers, we would greatly appreciate it. Without further ado, though, let's dive into the topic at hand. Make sure to grab a snack, as it's going to be a jam packed episode. And like I mentioned in the introduction, the G League roster has finally been revealed for this Phoenix Suns team after the speculation of finally having this Phoenix Suns G League squad, we finally now know what this team could possibly look like. From looking at this list, we can see plenty of names that I remember. Drop down your thoughts on the roster and if you guys remember any of these names. But going down the list, we got Garrison Brooks, Shonda Brown Jr., Gary Clark, Matt Lewis, Didi Luazda, Theo Maladone, Emmanuel Mudiay, Michael Mueller, Jahlil Okafor, Justin Smith, Denzel Valentine, Quindary Witherspoon, Lindell Wigington, and Trevion Williams. Now, like I mentioned, if you guys know any of these names, if you guys have any thoughts of any of these players, drop down that in the comment section down below to kind of give you guys a more of a synopsis on how the expansion draft works. We have an update from the G League here saying that the new Valley Suns G League team selected 14 unprotected returning players in the 24-25 expansion draft. The G League Suns will retain the league rights to these selected players for 2 seasons, beginning with the 24 and 25 season. And note that the Valley Suns now own the returning player rights to these 14 players selected during the expansion draft, but this does not guarantee that these players will play for the Suns next season, but that the team has the rights to their contract if they were to return to the G League. So kind of going over this, kind of going into in detail. Obviously, these players that are in the G League, guys like Jahlil Okafor, guys like Emmanuel Mudiay, have the opportunity to go overseas and take some money over there. So depending on if they want to work through the G League trying to get back to the NBA or want to go out and get a bag overseas and still perform and get to still play the game that they love on a little bit of a less of a quality, it does make sense. So now the Suns have basically, as we saw from this, these 14 guys on this roster. And like I said, there are some guys on this roster that I like, and there are some guys on this roster that I think are kind of crazy that they are on here. Some guys I also, to be honest, I really don't know, and that's totally okay. And if there's some guys you don't know, that's totally fine as well. So let's kind of dive in. Let's look at this roster, and let's look at some of the names that we do know. So kind of speaking, looking at a couple of the names as you guys know from the introduction, the two guys that I did use for the starter images were Emmanuel Mudiay and Jahlil Okafor, probably the most prominent names on this list. Jahlil Okafor, obviously, being selected third overall by the Philadelphia 76ers, and just did not pan out in the NBA. Obviously, part of that process through drafting Nerlens Noel, drafting Joel Embiid, drafting Jahlil Okafor, and trying to find out who was going to be that star center. And it just wasn't Jahlil Okafor. The game he was a back to the basket center and really dominant in that sort of aspect of scoring. And it was kind of in the midst of translating to a 3-point game. Everybody had to have a 3-point shot. Jahlil Okafor was just a player that could not develop that 3-point shot. Therefore, he kind of fell out of the league, had some runs with the Pelicans and stuff, but could never really hold a contract. Similar to Emmanuel Mudiay, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was very high on a guy in Emmanuel Mudiay when he was in that draft class. Believe he was selected as a top 10 pick, like, quote me if I'm wrong, either seventh or eighth by the Denver Nuggets, and he was a point guard from the Republic of Congo, but he was a point guard that was coming in that I thought could be very explosive, a very, unique, talented point guard. He had all the tools that checked out, and I was very, very high on him. And unfortunately, he never really panned out either for the Denver Nuggets and could never really find his step in the NBA. So for players like Emmanuel Mudiay and players like Jahlil Okafor who have been trying to grind through the G League or been working overseas and have been, trying to get back into the NBA game, this is another stop for them and another, push to try to get there. And they're also in one of the better systems. Having the Phoenix Suns, having players like Durant, Booker, and Beal will definitely help out when these teams practice alongside their G League affiliates, and also, work with this team in general to, if they do get called up, at least they have some good representation from some good veterans. When looking at this list, there's some other names that I do remember as well. Didi Luazda, I know he's a Brazilian basketball player. Don't really know that much about him, but if you do know more about him, you can obviously drop it down below in the comment section. Guys like Denzel Valentine, he was obviously on Michigan State for a while. Should have declared for the draft a year early, but decided not to. Had his draft stock fall a little bit, and then never really panned into that player for the Chicago Bulls. Had a run with the Celtics for a little bit with their G League and over there. And then Theo Maladone, another player who had some run with the Oklahoma City Thunder for a little while, a young point guard who had some good playmaking skills. He's another guy that you can kind of tap in and look at, and the Suns do need a point guard. They do need these young talents at that point guard. So who knows? Maybe Theo Maladone can be that little diamond in the rough, kind of working through his way and kind of bolstering himself to a two-way contract, similarly, or even a regular contract, similar to where we saw with guys like Vince Williams or G.G. Jackson Jr. for the Memphis Grizzlies this season. We could see something like that with Theo Maladone, and I think that would be something cool and something very insightful, especially with the first year of this G League squad kind of coming through. There's obviously some other guys as well, Lindell Wingington and Quendari Witherspoon. Excuse me, don't want to butcher their names, but Lindell Wingington, I know from playing with the Milwaukee Bucks being near the end of their bench. Quindary Witherspoon, a journeyman kind of going here and there. So at least they'll be back in the Phoenix Suns all on this one team and be all playing together in this G League. And honestly, when we look at this G League squad, to my knowledge, they did not steal anybody from either the Oklahoma City squad or the or the Maine Celtics squad, which were the two top teams and playing in the finals for the NBA G League championship. So that's huge. I don't know if there's any restriction or rule on that, and if there is, obviously let me know. But if that's not, I mean, that's crazy that no one from either of those teams got picked up. It was a bunch of players from a bunch of other organizations. But honestly, when looking at this list, there are some guys that I like, some names that I do know, some names that I don't know. But I think that also brings some funness for this team, like a guy like Garrison Brooks or maybe a Matt Lewis, somebody that I'm not really too fond of with their game. By watching them in the G League or maybe watching them play with this Suns team, I can kind of understand their game and get a little bit better of understanding of basketball in general, which I think is huge. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys like a mix of this roster? Again, I mentioned some young guys, some older guys, some guys who've been in the league, some guys that have been fighting for some spots. Again, it's their G League squad. I don't expect any of these guys to really, make an impact for the regular Phoenix Suns, but it still is exciting for the Suns to finally and officially have a G League, the last team to get one. Now every team in the NBA has one. They can use that farm system, I guess, a little bit. Maybe not want to sacrifice all those draft picks as well, like Matt Ishbia and James Jones have been saying to want to, have a fire sale and throw them all out there. Maybe by having this G League, this allows them to want to take some potential and draft into some untapped potential and really invest in developing into some of these players. And that would be nice for the Phoenix Suns and I think the fans as well. I think that's something they would enjoy. So again, let me know how you guys feel. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys enjoy the content, enjoy the videos, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. We really do appreciate it over here on Suns Digest, excuse me. I'm Bruce Velez. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out and go Phoenix Suns.